Hey guys, Katie here from Equestrian Movement. Today we're going to be talking about how to ride with more bend and what our judges mean when they're saying more bend, more frame, more propulsion. And we just get those like little 6s, 6.5s, and we're just kind of cruising by on 55 to 60%. And why can't we break that 65%? More bend. The thing that we most commonly do wrong in prelim with more bend is displacing the shoulders. This is 100% my pet peeve. When we are asking our horse to bend, before you understand what the hindquarters feel like and you know how to ride them through, you end up keeping the horse out by displacing their shoulders outside of that musculoskeletal alignment. And this really does do long-term damage to your horse's back, puts a lot of concussion on the forehand, and it means that they can't come up into self-carriage. We lose forwardness. We end up with false engagement. So when we are trying to drive the hindquarters through, instead of them coming through and weight bearing, they're just over-rotating through the pelvis, and they're not truly transitioning their weight onto their hindquarters for balance. And so we end up doing a lot of damage to our horses when we're trying to ride more bend, when we are doing it incorrectly in this period. So to truly ride bend, our horses need to fold laterally through the rib cage. They need to flex laterally through the rib cage, and they need to change the action of their shoulder, so they're no longer turning their toe in, but they're rotating through their shoulder. So normally they are that way when they first start. To get them to bend, we want them to go that way so that they change the rotation of their shoulder blade. That's when we're starting to develop some shoulder fall. So that they're not leaning and balancing on that inside shoulder or falling out through the outside shoulder. So the trick to this is riding that inside hind, getting a feel of what that inside hind is doing it, and getting it through and getting it underneath the horse so that they're transferring the weight onto that inside hind so that they can fold laterally around your leg, flex laterally through their rib cage. This is really hard for a horse to do. It's not particularly natural to them. It's a form of athletic performance, a type of gymnastic work that is the base and the foundations of developing self-carriage with our horses. And it takes a lot of time to build up the horse's ability to be able to do that. So when we're in prep and prelim and our judges are saying more bend, and we create more bend falsely by getting them to drop out and fall out through the shoulder, then we are going to struggle when it comes to progressing. And this is one of the main reasons why it's so hard to transition out of novice into elementary, because instead of teaching them how to come around our leg to bend, we teach them how to fall out through the shoulder. And so then how do we do shoulder in, which is our elementary movement? And we say, my horse isn't good enough. It doesn't have the athletic performance that I need it to be able to do shoulder in. Well, no, you just haven't figured out how to feel for the inside hind yet, unfortunately. So the skill that we need for developing the ability of the horse to bend around our inside leg is actually leg yield. If we do leg yield right, we learn how to feel the inside hind coming through, and we develop the horse's ability. Hey Renee, how you going? We develop the horse's ability to step through on that inside hind. So in our leg yield, we're using our aids to ride our horse to the track, and then in doing so we're feeling for the inside hind coming through and underneath itself and teaching the horse how to engage. And then once we get the hind quarter into the right place, we can then bend the horse around our inside leg. I was talking to one of my students recently about this, and she was saying, this seems really hard for our horse to do. There isn't a lot of movement through the vertebrae to allow for this. And that is 100% accurate. There is not a lot of room of flex through the vertebrae to allow our horse to do this easily straight away. It's a very long and dedicated road of improving the structural integrity of the spine, the strength of the spine, and then the suppleness of the spine to create this elasticity so that we're not creating any damage when we're asking for this. So you want to make sure that you're going to do this right, and you've got to have in your mind what you're trying to do this for, because if you are just trying to get the numbers and the marks and the ribbons, then you're not going to have the patience to allow the horse to develop it correctly, and that's where we can lead to injury. So again, remembering we've got 6 to 8 weeks for balance, 3 to 4 months for muscle tone, 6 to 12 months for bone density and ligament density. So with our circles, our first goal is being able to do that 20-meter circle, and so the angle through their body isn't quite as much, but it's still pretty hard. It's not an easy achievement for a green horse. So if you do manage to get true bend around your inside leg with your horse on a 20-meter circle, just sing it praises. Hallelujah, girlfriend. You have worked hard to get that. The leg yield with it is very important. So you have to be a little bit more educated than your horse at this stage to understand how to ride that hind leg through to the right position to get the actual fold through the horse's rib cage, so that we're developing periods of self-carriage and true bend on the circle. The other problem that we have with our circles is the horse doesn't read the same textbook that we read. We get told that our aid for bend is inside leg at the girth, outside leg behind, inside rein rides a flexion, outside rein rides a half halt, and we're riding them from inside leg to outside rein. But the horse, it didn't read the same textbook. We are their textbook. We're explaining to them these complex concepts and trying to find ways of communicating that with them. So just putting your outside leg behind the girth and your inside leg at the girth, your horse doesn't go, oh, I know what that means. That means bend. And they just beautifully, naturally bend around your inside leg. No, it's up to you to teach your horse what those aids mean. And it starts with just basic steering. You need your horse to be moving off your outside leg so that its shoulders are following your rein. While you're doing this, you're also positioning the weight onto the inside hind to start creating carriage on it, weight bearing on it, sorry. Once you can get the weight bearing on that inside hind from maneuvering the shoulders around, you are then yielding them out. So you're yielding that hind through into a position of balance and carriage and weight bearing. And then your horse has a shifty little trick. It will drop its pelvis, and hey presto, now it doesn't have to work so hard. So we then have a new skill to learn of being able to maintain even throughness and even engagement of both hind legs. Cue your figure of 8 and your serpentines, where you're consistently changing your bend so your horse doesn't get the opportunity to rotate through the pelvis that way. As soon as it drops one of those hind legs, the only option it has is to go onto the forehand. So it's either going to fall in or it's going to fall out. So if your horse is consistently falling either way, then you know that it isn't engaged. It's not through from behind. And when I talk about engagement, I'm not talking about the hips folding underneath too deep and the horse not actually transferring their weight onto the hindquarters. I'm talking about hock flexion. So they are sitting deeper. They're doing like squats through their hindquarters. When we have even hock flexion through the hindquarters and we can start riding bend around our inside leg, that's when we start developing true bend, and it will lead to true self-carriage, which will lead to true forwardness, which will lead to true impulsion. And it is a big journey. There is a lot to learn as a rider. You can so easily just, pull your horse around that 20-meter circle, put a little bit of inside leg on, kick it off of it so that it looks like it's bending. But if you're using these exercises for the development of your horse long term, their musculoskeletal soundness, their quality of self-carriage, their quality of movement, so that you can progress up the levels, it takes a lot. There is a lot to learn at this stage to get this connection established. But once you have it, you don't have to go back and learn again. So that's definitely one of the problems that I had trying to transition into elementary. And everybody has always told me, everybody gets stuck at elementary. Nobody can get past novice. Obviously people can get past novice, but there's a selected few that really, can get out of novice into elementary. And those people get there by learning how to work the horse off the forehand. And we aren't going to get there if we create frame by pulling our horse's head down and not driving them through to our hands. And we're also not going to get there if we are creating bend by displacing the shoulders, allowing the shoulders to fall out for bend. So to figure out if your horse is bending incorrectly, it can be a little bit tricky. It requires a subtle feel. If you're having to pull your horse to turn, it's not bending. If your rein contact is uneven, your horse is not bending. If your hands aren't even, your horse is not bending. If your hips collapse on your circles, so if your horse has fallen out, if your horse has fallen out, it's dropped the outside hind, and so your pelvis will collapse out. If your horse has dropped the inside hind, your pelvis will probably collapse in. And so there is really a subtle feel there of you knowing when you are straight and aligned, and knowing when your horse is straight and aligned, knowing when your horse is seeking your aids, knowing when your horse is working around your leg, knowing when your horse is being responsive to your aids. The trick of prelim is not so much the movements and the exercises themselves. They're quite easy. The trick of prelim is your musculoskeletal conditioning, your behavioural and your cue training to get a soft, willing, eager to participate horse, so that when you start introducing the more complex movements, they are doing them with ease. And as a partner in this little journey, that we're not physically bullying them into moving their body, they are trying to move their body with us. When we try and pull flexion, when we try and pull frame, when we are constantly keeping our horse off our leg instead of around our leg and into our leg, then our horse is going to be constantly counterbalancing us. And as a result, we get them using the wrong muscles. So having a horse that's working with us, working willingly, seeking our aid, seeking the correct response, they are flexing their muscles themselves. If we are trying to make our horse do it, then we're trying to force the flexion of the muscles, and as a result, we're putting them off balance. So we're actually making them flex the counterbalancing muscles. So for example, if we are using our inside rein for flexion and we're trying to make them flex, then if we do actually manage to make them flex, we are going to throw them off balance. So they're then going to be using the opposite muscles to counterbalance our heavy hand. So what we're actually trying to learn here is not how to ride a circle with more bend, but how to ride a bend with a willing horse. Because with a willing horse, then the horse creates the bend through its body itself, and when it creates the bend through its body itself, it inspires those muscles and it conditions those muscles so that down the track you can ask for more bend through their body. So getting down to your 15-meter circles, getting down to your 10-meter circles, getting down to your 8-meter circles. That happens as a result of the horse bending its own body, not of us bending their body. So this is a very important skill for us to learn in prelim, and it is often overlooked for getting the quality that the judge wants to see. That comes later. When your horse is willingly seeking your aids and working with you and bending its body, then we can start refining that quality to the quality that the judge wants to see. In this bit here, we need to learn what it feels like. We need to learn how to communicate. We need to learn what the horse needs from us, and we need to take our time and let their body develop to be able to ride that more bend. Once we get that lateral flexion through their body, it creates the suppleness to create a rounder frame, and it creates the engagement to create more impulsion. So down the track, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get even impulsion to engagement to frame. If we have more engagement and more frame than we have lift, then we just have our horse working on the forehand and we're working them incorrectly. So teaching our horse how to bend around our inside leg here is a key skill in developing that quality of forward, that quality of impulsion and lift, and that quality of working frame that we're looking for. So I hope that answers some of your questions. I will talk to you next week. Bye.